Good afternoon and welcome to the second installation of Conversations at NAS. This afternoon we'll be dealing with a very relevant topic for this month, growing research excellence in Africa. This topic has been supported and discussed quite a bit this month at the University of Pretoria. We've recently had the Africa Genius Awards, we had the Nobel Prize Dialogues, and we also celebrated Africa Day. And we felt that we can provide a bit of an overview, not just of the bigger picture within which this faculty would like to grow research excellence, but also to provide some of the personal and individual stories of excellent researchers in NAS. What is this African context that we refer to and it's been discussed at length in the last month or two? Well, first of all, we know that Africa is the most natural resource-rich continent with the least amount of transformed land globally. So there's plenty of opportunity here. We also know that the population in Africa is likely to reach 1.3 billion people by 2050. And there's a good chance that by 2100, a third of all people on the globe might be living in Africa. And the real opportunity here is that the bulk of these people will be young people. Coupled with the opportunity of technological leapfrogging, with all the aforementioned natural resources, Africa is a sleeping giant waiting to awake, not just for the people of Africa, but actually to be the most important continent globally. Unfortunately, this is not the only news. There is some bad news and some real challenges ahead as well. We cannot ignore land degradation, we cannot ignore disease emergence and climate change and the true cost of food. Recent studies have shown that land degradation affects about 3.2 billion people globally, with a total cost of 10% of the annual global gross product. So tremendous cost, and still these people, almost half people on Earth, are affected by land degradation. We know from several studies that the benefits of restoration far outweighs the costs. The same goes when we look at disease emergence. The pandemic have triggered a number of studies on the cost of emergence, of this novel disease emergence. And it is very clear that avoiding novel disease emergence is a lot cheaper than coping with the consequences of the pandemic. The same goes for climate change. It is a lot cheaper avoiding the adverse effects of climate change by limiting it in the first place, rather than just coping and trying to adapt to the consequences of climate change. Another area that presents significant challenges to the African continent is that of food security. The challenge with food is that typically the benefits of growing an intact food system don't necessarily accrue to those closest to the food system. So in general, and this also goes for land degradation, we end up with large local impacts and variable local benefits. And definitely much bigger benefits globally due to the teleconnected nature of international trade. Watch this space for a new report on the true cost of food, led by Professor Cheryl Hendricks from this faculty. Initial estimates, and there will be proper press releases and more information forthcoming in the next week or two, is that the hidden externalities of producing food is twice the value of the total global food consumption. More to come on this topic. What this variable benefits and impacts of land degradation, disease emergence, climate and food shows us is that there's a need for some sort of transition, a transition to a new and different way of looking to the future. This is also true of South Africa. I'm just going to highlight one particular example of how important this just transition is for us. So South Africa, if we look, trades around about 19 commodities from recent DTI data. 5 of these commodities account for about 75 to 80% of external foreign income. These 5 commodities are platinum metals, coal, gold, iron ore, and ferroalloys. These are highly carbon-intensive industries. And South Africa is severely dependent on this external income, not just to finance our national debt, but also to ensure food securities and balance that with all the other social and economic priorities within the country. There's a real need to think carefully and deeply about where we are in South Africa, on the continent, and what sort of transition we need to ensure a sustainable future for everyone on the continent, but also globally, given the role that Africa will play in future. The basis for this transition is, of course, excellence. It's about excellence in knowledge and the researchers behind creating this new knowledge. And therefore, it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you Professor Lynn-Marie Burkholz. She's from the Department of Biochemistry, Genetics and Microbiology, and she'll be leading the panel discussion this afternoon with some of our brightest and best young researchers in the faculty. It's a balance of personal journeys, understanding what the enablers and the hurdles might be towards research excellence, and I look forward to learn from these young academics. Professor Lynn-Marie Burkholz is the director of the SARTI Chair in Sustainable Malaria Control, and she's also the leader of the parasite cluster of the UP Institute for Sustainable Malaria Control. Lynn-Marie, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Erasmus. I'm Lynn-Marie Burkholz, and I welcome you to the second Conversations at NAS event. With me today, I have 4 of the leading young minds within the faculty, and we're going to be really talking to them about their personal journeys, their experiences, and their vision for the future, and also how they see themselves grow and contribute towards the university as being an internationally leading African global university. I'd like to introduce you to our panel members for this afternoon. On my right here, I have Dr. Rian Rifkin. He is a postdoctoral fellow within the Center for Microbial Ecology and Genomics, and he works as a molecular archaeologist. Then I've got Dr. Sithole Makai. She's a statistician within the Department of Statistics, and she is really have a focus on statistical modeling in health systems. Then I introduce you to Dr. Michał Gwizdauer. I hope I've got that correct. He is a biophysicist within the Department of Physics, and he's really joining us as a senior postdoctoral fellow within that department. And then joining us remotely from, which is really South Africa's whale capital, Hermanus, at her research station, is Dr. Els Vermeulen, who's the research manager of the whale unit of the Mammalian Research Institute. I'd like you also to post any questions that you have to any of these panel members as we are carrying on in the live chat. So really to start off with, we'd really like to just chat to you and find out about your personal experiences in terms of where you are at in your career now. But before we do that, I'd like you to each introduce briefly your research focus area. So Rian, if you can start off, please.
Thank you very much. At the moment, we focus on recovering ancient DNA from South African archaeological contexts. And we do this because we're interested in discovering which diseases or which pathogens affected human evolution in Africa over the last 50 or 60 or up to 80,000 years. Many of those diseases are very relevant today as we're all living through this global pandemic.
Very interesting, and I find it fascinating that we're transgressing molecular archaeology, biological archaeology, and using these cutting-edge techniques to address your questions. Sithole, you as a statistician, congratulations, you just received your PhD, so we're very happy and proud for that. So if you can tell us a little bit about your research focus area.
All right. Firstly, I would like to say good afternoon to everyone, to our audience who are watching from home virtually. Yes, my name is Sithole Makai, and I am a lecturer and statistician at the Department of Statistics. As a researcher, I use mathematics and probability laws to develop models actually that enable practitioners to model a wide range of multivariate data sets, specifically in the environmental or psychology and even the medical sciences. And actually one of my models or statistical distributions that I developed got the attention of Status A and through a postgraduate competition of which I won. And
congratulations.
Thank you. And that model is used for hydrology data sets such as flooding of rivers. So in all, I would say that Sithole is a young academic who is passionate about education, about contributing to statistics as a science, as well as passionate about the South African youth.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Sithole. Now we got to know you a little bit better. Thank you. Michał, as a biophysics leader, that is quite a niche area. Can you tell us a little bit about your research, please?
Yes, thanks. I do work at the Department of Physics, but I'm not a physicist. I did my master's in biotechnology, then I did my PhD in biology, and it's because of the topic that I study that I'm actually now at the Department of Physics. I study photosynthesis. I want to understand how plants, algae, and some bacteria are so good in converting solar energy into, let's say, more useful forms of energy from the perspective of other biological organisms. So at the end of my PhD, I realized that I can study those systems using different methods that are not available typically to biologists. And that's why I moved to Amsterdam, where I learned how to use advanced spectroscopic methods and to study further photosynthetic systems. And then 5 years ago, opportunity opened to move to South Africa, join my colleagues at the Department of Physics, the biophysics group, and start building from scratch the biophysics in Africa. On the African continent is the first research program in this field. And moving to Africa actually also gave me opportunities to go outside the lab with my research, and that was something I never did before in Europe. I could go to the desert and study some cyanobacteria, some organisms managing to survive those harsh conditions. Also, recently I established a small startup project, which is focused on food technology. It's the way for me to convert the knowledge that I gained into something that is more applicable, more useful. So we're trying to use our skills into bringing a new generation of foods to the market.
That is very interesting, and it's so applicable, being able to take your core science and have some output and some real meaningful outcome of that core science.
Exactly, yeah.
Thank you very much. Yeah. And then last but not least, we will not forget about you, Els. So Els, I introduced that you work on whales. So can you please tell us a little bit more about your research focus area?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for zooming me in. So with Whale Unit, we focus our research on large baleen whales in Southern Africa and the Southern Ocean. My own research expertise lies in population ecology, and obviously with a strong drive for conservation biology and preserving the populations of the cetaceans that we have on our shores. The crown jewel of Whale Unit obviously is a 50-year-long database we have on southern right whale population monitoring, and the core focus of our research at this point is using that database to look at the effects of climate change on various regions in the Southern Ocean that are used by these whales. So we're using the right whales actually as the right sentinels, we call it like that, to study the effects of climate change on the Southern Ocean.
That's very important, and it's really quite interesting to find that climate change, like Prof. Rasmus just told us about, how far-reaching those effects are, and that you're using the whale as a predictor and as a really analysis tool to look at how far we are really changing the climate that we're working in and living in. Thank you very much. I think that's a really good introduction to each of your research areas. I know there's trends that are shared between all of you, but definite focus areas, and I think that's so nice to have a panel of diverse research expertise to talk to you, to talk about this afternoon. I really think that, as Prof. Rasmus said, the importance of highlighting and showcasing leading young scientists is also to understand how you got where you are. And I think that's what some of the audience members might really want to know, and not just about the research focus area. So we are very interested really to understand how you got to where you are at now, and really what you think those key success factors are that enabled you to be where you are at now. So maybe if I can ask the ladies first, if you don't mind, CT, how do you think, what was your personal experience in getting where you are at now?
All right, thanks for that question, Prof. I joined the University of Pretoria at 23 years of age as an Ngap lecturer. And Ngap stands for New Generation of Academics. So it's a program designed by the Department of Higher Education in collaboration with South African universities, with the aim to support and grow literally a new generation of academics. So that being said, I would say the exception in my story or my journey is that there was a deliberate system put in place to cater for my success. So for this system to work, there were targets placed on teaching and research as well as community engagement. And we all know that it's not easy to actually balance both teaching and research.
Hats off to you, lady.
It wasn't easy, and it wasn't a seamless transition. But the way that it worked out so well because of my HOD, Professor Andrea Becker. What she did so well was to place us into groups for different modules so that each team member or lecturer would have the support that they need to balance both teaching and research load. And with regards to research, I would say I'm actually privileged to have worked with a team that took my success as an important thing. They knew that me succeeding would actually contribute to their success as well. So my supervisor, Prof. Andrea Becker, who is one of the leading female statisticians in South Africa, if not in Africa, and my co-supervisors, Prof. Mohammed Arashi, one of the youngest internationally rated researchers, really, he's very smart, and Dr. Fisachi and Prof. Deval, they have all contributed to my success. So answering your question, Prof, I would say it took quite a lot of support from others. You can't do it by yourself. You need a good team to help you get to where you need to be.
That is a very, very important point that you make there. And I'm also hearing the fact that role models were there for you and mentors were there for you were quite enabling in your journey, right?
Yes. I mean, for the Ngap program specifically, I was appointed a mentor, Dr. Franz Kanfer, but also my HOD and supervisor also played a role as a mentor. And it was a deliberate thing. So it wasn't by accident. There were systems put in place so that I can be where I am today.
Great. With lots of input from your side, I'm sure. Els, if I can move over to you, if you can tell us a little bit about what you perceive to be your key success factors in establishing yourself as a leading young scientist.
Yeah, thanks very much for that question. So to give a bit of context, I think I did not have a standard academic career, or at least not a standard start of an academic career. So as a Belgian national, it's not very straightforward to become a marine mammal biologist, which is what I've always dreamed of as a little child. So as a young student, recent graduate in my master's, I think I struggled a bit with the competitiveness in the field and the difficulty to obtain bursaries. And so at the age of 22, I moved to Patagonia in Argentina and started an NGO to actually commence the work that I really wanted to do. And that was researching the whales at that point in that country. But eventually, after a few years, I felt a bit limited of not having the PhD title. So I did venture then into the academic world a bit more and then obtained a PhD and now finished 2 postdocs. So currently I'm sit as a research manager of the whale unit. And so in that way, I guess my academic career is relatively young because it's only since the last 2-3 years that I stopped feeling like a student. And it's a nice place to be at. So at this point, I feel very privileged that I can manage various research projects while focusing obviously on my own research, as it allows me to use my creativity in a very broad field and not all of which is in my own expertise. So I feel like I get to be pushed a bit out of my own comfort zone and learn other aspects of the research field. So I'm actually very excited for the future ahead in that way. And I think the key factors of driving me forward is, I think there's one only, and that is the passion for the animals that I work with, the passion for their well-being and conservation, and obviously for the research. I love solving puzzles. I love the research itself. So I guess that is my biggest drive in all of it.
Great, thank you. That's a very insightful and personal vision that you have there. So, and that's what drives us. That's what makes us get up in the morning and do what we do. I truly believe without the passion, you really can't do what you do. And you have to love what you do as a scientist. Yeah. Michal, yes, key success factors. Going from your diversity of backgrounds into what you're doing now.
Yeah, when it comes to the path that I took, it was always about the questions that I was asking at a given moment. So I was at the stage doing some experiments that I was interested in understanding more physics about the process. So then I was privileged to have a chance to meet other scientists from different disciplines. And I could talk to them and ask, do you have those tools? And can I come and work with you for some time? So this is basically how I moved around for most of the time. I was meeting people, talking with them, and saying, I have those questions. Can you help me answering them? And I think the key factor for success here is what really motivates us. So in my case, it's belief that what I'm doing can, in some time, have impact on society in general. We're using very often some public funds for this, so it should come back to the people as well. So I believe that my research can actually lead to the development, for example, of some solar biotechnologies in the future that will replace current technologies of production something or improve agricultural production. There's also, for me, more personal motivation, and this is actually the excitement that you get when you do an experiment in the lab, and you look at your result, and you know something about nature that nobody else knows in the world. So you're the first and only person that knows something about nature that surrounds us. That's exciting, isn't it?
That's that eureka moment that we all strive for.
Even
right.
if it's
teensy one.
Even if it's the smallest possible, it's still
Absolutely.
exciting, and it still drives us, I think. All of us, probably.
Yeah. Thank you. I know we've all been there, and we've all been on the downs where it's not the eureka, but that teensy little eureka is absolutely what we do. Yeah. Rian, your experiences.
I can identify closely with Michal's experiences, especially in terms of the fact that passion and motivates us, and the thrill of discovering something new or something novel. But then also, I suppose, deep down inside, we all feel that we want to do something that can change the world in a positive way. And our disease research, I think, has the potential to do that. But I come from a long time ago. I studied nature conservation. I worked as a guide and a game ranger, and then I came to study archaeology and anthropology, and I've done a number of different things along the line. But I think these different experiences of going different places, meeting different people, as your interests change and as your questions change as well, you need to interact with people who work in those fields as experts. And what I found in academia is that most academics are extremely willing to sit down and listen to your story and listen to your questions. And if they don't know the answer, they're going to assist you in figuring out what is going on. And the passion forms a big part of that. I think we need to. I noticed this with students at UP as well. Passion is a really big factor in terms of how successful they are or become, or how far they take their academic studies. It's really tough sometimes. Persistence is another big factor. You need to be
absolutely.
persistent.
Yeah.
And you need to network. You need to talk to people from different fields. You need to have friends in far away places in academia and in industry as well.
Great. I'm going to latch on to that little persistence word because it's so important, resilience and persistence. And I'm pretty sure none of you would have been here without those skills. So you've got a passion, you've got that drive, you've got that search for the unknown. And some of you were very well connected with networks and enabling situations. But were there some hurdles in what you experienced to where you got to now? And if so, how did you overcome those challenges? Because I think that's really valuable lessons for the next generation of young scientists to really hear about. So, Rian, I'm going to, since you talked about persistence, there we go.
Well, there's a number of hurdles. I think we all live and lead personal lives as well. So besides that, you have your academic or professional life, and you need to get the two to gel together, and that's not always easy. But besides that, I think for any of us who work on really novel projects, securing funding for your research is often quite difficult. It's good to have an idea, but I think so many brilliant people have so many brilliant ideas, and many of these just don't get the support that they should be getting. It's not for me to judge who should get support or who should not, but I think once again persistence will definitely assist you in refusing to just give up on any idea that you have. I think believing in what you think could transpire as a set of great results, or you could possibly change society for the better. I think you need to persist, and you need to, once again, network, ask questions, never ever stop asking questions, never.
That inner child, right?
Yes.
And try again and keep on asking the questions.
Yes.
That's what we are as scientists. Yeah. CT, any hurdles, any challenges that you overcame?
Yes, I don't know about you, Prof, or my other colleagues, but I had a challenge with something called the imposter syndrome, or having, setting limitations in your mind, having self-doubt. And I'll say that how I overcame, it's not like I completely overcame those challenges. It's still like an ongoing, I guess, phase throughout the journey of life. But I'll say it's very important to actually just have a team that supports you and that reminds you of your potential. So I won't say it's been a chronic disease, but it is something that I have witnessed that it has been quite a challenge for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always experience that as a bit of the dichotomy of being a scientist, because we inherently people that do not like to necessarily face other people, but yet our science is out there and we are critiqued on every single thing that we do. And that's where you need to learn that balance of how do you are you able to handle those critiques and how do you stand up to that? And that actually just makes you grow as a scientist, definitely. Yeah. Michal.
I think, first of all, I should say that I believe it's great to be a scientist. And that's why we're all sitting here. We are probably share this belief. You get to do what you want to do. You get to follow your interests. And you're actually free to choose what you want to do.
Absolutely.
There's no other job that gives you that. Obviously, it comes at a price. And that refers to what Ryan said. And all of us are probably thinking. So one thing is traveling around the world for finding answers to the questions you're looking for. So there's not a single university, like the best university where you can find all the answers. No, it's spread. And we have to travel if we want to succeed. That's, at least in my case, that was how it is. And this comes at the price of leaving your family and friends behind. Yeah. At the same time, you get to experience new lifestyles, new places, and this is also exciting. Then there is in question of funding. That's always limiting in science. We all complain about not enough money.
Yeah.
But not enough money is not the major issue. It's one of the major issues, but also the system of distribution based on competitiveness. Yeah. So that we competing all against each other, basically. So that's not how it should look like, and the system is not sustainable in the long term. And for me personally, one last thing is the security of employment, especially at those levels of postdocs or senior postdocs or after your PhD. You do have those short-term contracts that allow you to do research, but it's hard to plan your future in a sense. And then in academia, basically, there's one ladder that you climb from PhD to postdoc, lecturer, senior lecturer, professor. There are no really options for people who would like to stop middle way, for example, for long term and get a permanent position of work in the lab. That's at least how I see it. So I do think that the system would need to be changed somehow as well here, and that's a hurdle in my opinion.
That is absolutely true, and I think that's if we link to Else, that's where she's in a very fortunate position, being a research manager, because as a professor, that's the thing that we always want to do. We want to go back to the lab and do the real hands-on research. But Else, you get to do that every day, but it's not all moonshine and roses, I assume, because you've got a lot of administrative and managerial responsibilities that you have to meet, right?
Yes, no, a lot. I look forward to the days I can actually get back to my science. So that's definitely one of the hurdles I'm trying to now strategically plan more around, to make sure that the finances to run the unit are there, and thinking a bit out of the box and trying to find other ways of sourcing funds that are not necessarily going to the competitive realm, because I agree obviously with the colleagues that it's not how the system should work, and so trying to tap in different kind of fields and thinking out of the box there. And if you talk about the hurdles that one experiences, I think I can very much relate to what already has been said, especially also in my field, having to leave behind family is probably one of the biggest personal hurdles that I had to overcome. And especially now having young children myself, to not have the ability to be with their grandparents very regularly, that's on a personal level, obviously a very challenging thing. But then obviously on the professional level, it's the lack of financial resources, the job security that Michal also touched about. It's taken me 18 years to come to the point that I'm now working with very little resources. So obviously no room for savings or pension or any kind of security in that way. And overcoming that has taught me different things that didn't necessarily come natural to me, like making marketing or doing accounting or the grant writing that we all have to do. And it feels almost like a scientist, you need to be multi-talented. You not have to be just a good scientist. You have to be able to sell your brand. You have to be good at networking. You have to be, all these different kind of things. And it's a hurdle on the one side, but obviously on the other side, it again takes you out of your comfort zone and it makes you grow, I think. So a lot of the skills I have gained over the years by having to do it in certain ways, I still use today to become a better scientist and do better at what I do. And I remember a book that my dad gave to me when I was still a young student with the title that says, "It's not how good you are, but it's how good you want to be." And that is something that I carry with me very closely.
Absolutely, very, very strong message there. And I agree. It's difficult to manage all of that, but that still, getting back to what Michal said, that core passion and that drive for why we are scientists, that's what makes us do what we do. Just a quick reminder that if you are joining us as an audience member, you are welcome to post any questions in the chat box so that we can address those questions a little bit later. I have quite an interest in both CT, your research approaches and your research focus areas, as well as yours, Michal. And in terms of the transdisciplinarity of where you are aiming towards, I think statistics is really at the core of a lot of science, and we really have to have statistics in terms of all of our research projects. But that also makes you very interdisciplinary with what you can do, and I think that's what you highlighted in your research focus area. And Michal, I think you, with saying you're coming from biology, going into physics, and then also your commercial slant that you've now attached to your research, makes it very transdisciplinary. So really, in your opinions, what do you think is the importance as an emerging young scientist to really tap into the transdisciplinarity of your research? Because it's not a necessarily easy thing to do, and I think a lot of established researchers are struggling to do that. So really just to understand how you approach that. Maybe you, Michal.
So I tend not to look at the disciplines when I'm looking for answers to my questions. This was introduced some time ago, disciplines were introduced some time ago to help people at that time to understand the world that was surrounding them. But it's not something that really, disciplines do not really describe the world in a holistic way. So they cannot give you a whole picture. So I do not aim in my research to be transdisciplinary. I just ask questions that are interesting for me, and I think that they're interesting for the society in the future. So it cannot be the goal in its own. It's just about, and at the end we do study nature. We try to understand the world that surrounds us, and there are no disciplines there. It's all one continuum. Like in photosynthesis, you have physical reactions, chemical reactions, all happen in the cells. This is a multidisciplinary topic on its own. So maybe for me it's easy to say it that way, but
that's a very important analogy. Thank you.
And then I think when we talking about transgressing the borders, we should go a bit further. We should even think about merging natural sciences with social sciences, economics. We need to give our students high-level tools, high-level skills, but they need to be able to function in economical reality, in society. So I think this is actually where we should go. So biophysics is interdisciplinary on its own, but we should go further. We should try to merge natural sciences with other skills that are important for researchers, or will be important for researchers to really make an impact. And that brings us to commercialization. So we do have ideas researching different topics, and we believe that our ideas can change the world, can improve the living of other people. But as for now, my feeling is that we, in our earlier stages of studies, do not get tools to help us to exist in this other reality. Because going out from academia to business world, that's really crossing a border. And that's a challenge, and I think it will be a challenge undertaken by more and more scientists in the future.
Absolutely. No, I agree. It's a skill that we don't have. We have to partner with the correct people that can actually enable us and teach us how to do that. But absolutely, we can't just do, necessarily, we don't have the luxury to do science for the sake of generating new knowledge only. It has to be applicable and has to be relevant. CT, your experience as a statistician?
In our Department of Statistics, we have a slogan that says statistics is an app for everything. Because statistics is everywhere, right? Like all of our departments at any institution needs statistical or data analysis for the particular research project. So as a researcher, when it comes to my project, I did my PhD in mathematical statistics. So the contribution there was to create models, develop new statistical distributions, contribute to the theory, really, of statistics. And then the other contribution was to show the relevance of these models, because you cannot just create models for the sake of creating them. You have to show the relevance. And the way that we showed relevance is to show the impact, how these models perform across various data sets. So as a researcher, I have that advantage of contributing to the knowledge and the theory, as well as seeing the direct impact. Now, as a lecturer at the Department of Statistics, the way that it is run is that we have internal and external consultation sessions where we could help postgraduate students with the research question, and then as well as help other businesses, external businesses, with the research question as well. So we have that area, and then there's also a balance of colleagues that develop new models, and then colleagues that actually look for a new way to apply statistics. And the application says everything. We need to apply our model somewhere so that essentially you could see the relevance of it. And answer important research questions.
Really great, because you mentioned you saw the application, but it's also vision. It's not just seeing that, and that's where that drive comes from, to be visionary in taking your research and seeing what is possible, and then to be able to manage those interactions with external stakeholders. I think is something really important. And I suppose as a statistician, that's part and parcel of what you have to do, because you are talking to all the rest of us.
Yes. If I could just add to that, Prof. So as a statistician, you are a scientist. You use mathematics and your understanding and intuition to develop new models or formulas, really. But then also outside, you are a business person.
Right.
You have to interact in a business manner and explain to your audience or your client essentially how this model will impact the business, which it's another, I guess, diverse skill that you have to learn as you go along. It takes practice. But it's an all-round, or what I could say as a statistician and the career as a statistician is an all-round mix of being a scientist as well as a business person.
Yep, absolutely. Great skill set that you have there. Lots of us should really learn from that. Sticking to the term relevance, I want to go back to you, Els, and just speak to you about your research focus area. You're doing research on whales, which is, of course, because it's the southern right whale that you mentioned, it's African-centered, right? We want to own that whale, and we want to say it is relevant to our context. But of course, your research is internationally leading as well. So how do you balance that focus in terms of being locally relevant but yet internationally leading?
Yeah, I mean, the work that we're doing is driven out of conservation purposes and out of the need or to understand populations so that we can have appropriate management and conservation measures in place. And for that, inherently, you need to be obviously regionally focused. You need to understand, this population, what is it affected by in this region specifically. But then obviously good science there alone wouldn't do it. At that point, we need to make sure that the relevant bodies nationally or internationally obviously know about your findings, so that if we want to make a difference, we really need to get out there with our knowledge and showcase the work and make them matter, really, so that conservation measures, and that the research actually can be used to set in the right conservation measures. So I think collaboration and networking here is a huge key. Much of my work has grown through setting up collaborations, both nationally and internationally. I really truly believe in getting collective brain power to do better research, to really get out there, trying to compare with other regions, how does it work with the right whales, for example, in South America or Australia, and that kind of global research, pulling together different expertise, different thinking, just the brainstorming on its own, I feel, is definitely a key factor in getting that international image, I guess. And I guess also leading in collaboration, I find, has worked for me a lot. Being someone that drives things forward, not just regionally, but also the collaborative aspect of the research. I think that is an important factor as well to take into account.
Absolutely. I truly believe we cannot do this on our own. That's been a strong experience in my life. But that's something that you also alluded to earlier, Rian. And I want to talk to you a little bit about that comment that you made, similar to what Elsa is now saying in terms of networking and collaboration. But also to understand your personal experience within a center. I mean, CMEG is a very big, it's a good established research center, and you find yourself able to, I suppose, tap into those resources and the expertise available within CMEG. Yet you also have to remain individually relevant and have your own research niche. How do you approach that?
Well, of course, it's often challenging. I came to CMEG specifically because our director, Professor Don Cowan, offered me an opportunity to explore this new research idea that I had, which I had trouble exploring at other universities in South Africa. Don, of course, is very open about this. I think he's very promoting of young minds. I'm not that young, but. And I think that's key to a lot of success of a lot of scientists, is that if you come across someone who can act as a mentor or simply as a colleague who's supportive. And of course, CMEG has a skill set that I really required for my research, and to be able to tap into that is just incredible. The computational capacity, the bioinformatics skill sets. Being an archaeologist, which is an anthropologist, I'm not trained in all these really complicated techniques that you guys are so used to and that you've mastered. And I've had to learn a lot, but I believe that I don't have to know all of it, because I have colleagues with which we collaborate, and that's of course what multidisciplinary science is. You need to find friends and colleagues who are willing to, or who share an interest in your research at least. And if you have 5 or 6 people with various different backgrounds and different fields of expertise, and you combine that, that's when you get to the really good stuff in terms of novel scientific discoveries. And of course publication is important as well. We need to communicate our results to the world, and this comes back into acquiring more funding for your research as well. So there's a bit of a cycle that is difficult to figure out if you're a young student. It's difficult to know what to do next, how it works.
Correct. As after your PhD, I think we all do in job training every single day, because we do a job that we necessarily weren't taught to how to do in our PhDs, right? Just getting back to the networking and the collaboration, because of course CMEG is very well connected. And are you able to tap into that? Is it useful to you, or are you establishing your own network through those connections?
Well, just getting to CMEG from the University of Witwatersrand, where I was before, was a great experience, because I was exposed to the wonderful world of molecular ecology, which I was largely unaware of. So it started for me with the CMEG staff, from Prof. Cowan to Tulani and Jean-Baptiste and Surendra and a number of other people. Many of them are still here. Many of them have left and explored other avenues and other universities. But and from there on, I could, I suppose via CMEG's network, I could tap into larger international networks, which I already had in terms of the archaeology and the anthropology. So I'm collaborating with great individuals at WITS, and at universities in Copenhagen and in France at Bordeaux and places like that, Toulouse. And over time, I think you tend to you tend to collaborate with people who share your interest and your passion. It doesn't always work out, of course, like life. This is just human relationships. It's not anything, something we taught while we study. You're still dealing with people, and we're still human beings. So there might be a clash of opinions or interest, but it works out. I think, once again, passion, persistence, and pushing the limits, seeking novelty and seeing if you can actually do what you think you can do.
Absolutely. So staying on the connectivity theme, how do you guys experience your changed work environment, or how much has your work environment changed now under the pandemic and there is a different way of working now? How do you stay connected? Because now we're not really able to go to conferences, and we don't really have the ability to have these face-to-face meetings. It's really insightful in science to have those and to have those personal interactions as well. So how's that changed for you? I don't know if we can go maybe to you first, Michal.
I see the pandemic as a chance, actually, for all of us around the world to interact. It's much easier. At the beginning, in 2020, some conferences were cancelled. We couldn't really talk with our colleagues around the world. But now the conferences are taking place. They are just in a virtual format. It's not the same, but we are all in the same position. So we all have to interact that way. So for scientists working in South Africa, I think it's a great chance. It makes our interactions much easier and puts us at the equal level with scientists in other countries. I actually probably at the end of 2020 participated in more conferences than I would without the pandemic. So it is a chance. Obviously, it comes. It's not that easy. It requires some change of mind, some transitions. But I believe that it will stay that way. Actually, that we'll have a lot of interactions virtually now.
Yeah. And it's so much more economically viable. It's
and
cheaper.
environmentally, without flying.
Exactly. So, I mean, we're talking to you, Els, remotely. How do you find working where you are and the connectivity and the way you are able to network from Hermanus, being an employee at the University of Pretoria?
Yes, well, it has been an advantage. So I was, for example, supposed to come up for lecturing. And then obviously with the pandemic, I wasn't allowed to travel. And then the virtual lecturings happened and obviously facilitated that I didn't need to travel at that point. Again, it's not the same. I like face-to-face interactions, especially, also talking like on conferences, like Michael says, like having the beers afterwards is often where the real networking happens. But I'm sure that with some more innovation, we'll get there. I was just part of the International Whaling Commission meetings, and there's actually a virtual social room where people could just log in and have the beers on your computer. But I can only hope that, going a bit forward and some of those more innovative ideas come, that, like you say, it would be less financial resources needed to actually network. So I think in the end, it might become a big benefit for us.
Yeah, right. I think I'm going to move over for the last 5 minutes or so to some hot topics. Things you have talked about funding, so we're not going to be able to talk about that anymore. We all know it's a struggle. I recognize it's still a struggle to me as well. Let's talk about that other little hot topic that we kind of touched on, that we all live by as scientists: publish or perish. So what are your publication strategies? How do you approach? You have to do this. CT, you were looking a bit despondent there.
Yeah. So okay. So firstly, as a researcher, you're interested in answering a specific question, right? And I'm just talking from my experience as a student now. After my PhD. Now the question is, what is the question that matters to me most?
Right.
And how do I then, establish myself as an independent researcher?
Right.
So essentially, you're asking, how do you maintain your identity as a person in the world and as a human scientist as well in an institution? So I would say, for me, it's an ongoing journey, But firstly, it's going back to the drawing board, like what matters to me most? Like what is it that I want to answer? What questions could I answer with the skills that I have? And so if you get to that point, then you will have something to contribute. And because it'll matter, it'll be
Absolutely,
relevant.
yeah.
And
And that's going to be that high impact paper that you're really striving for.
Yes.
So Rian, to you, do you approach it from an individual perspective of obviously it's your research, it's your work, but how much do you rely on collaborators and co-authors, given your team of students? But yeah,
Completely. I mean, students are brilliant. The students are quite a bit younger than I am, and they are just in awe of their minds and their skill sets and how fast they learn. Postdocs as well, and of course the international colleagues, local colleagues and collaborators. It's all about teamwork. And Els was saying earlier that it's as you progress and perhaps as you get older as an academic, you need to start leading these collaborations as well. You need to take on a more of a managing position, and you need to get ideas and people and papers together. But publishing our results is of utmost importance. Publish or perish. It's sad to say, but in a way it's true. But what I've learned in the past is that there are many other ways of communicating science and your results as well. And I think if you could spend a day and go to a local primary school or a high school and talk to these kids about what you do, I mean, if you inspire one or two of them to end up at UP and do a BSc degree or a BA degree or any degree, I think you've made a huge change. I think kids, children, young adults, teenagers, I think they're key to the sustainable life in Africa.
Absolutely. And we're hoping that this environment and this conversation that we're having today is going to inspire some of those young kids to actually see that you can do it. It's doable and it's interesting, and it's a way of life really for all of us. So we really have, it's a good point to actually go into the audience questions. So we have 3 questions at the moment. If anybody wants to post any more questions, please go ahead and do so in the chat box. So the first question, I'm going to read it out quickly, is from Tombe Gama. She's in my biochemistry division in my department in biochemistry, genetics and microbiology. And she's asking really, how did you as the panelists manage to have a good work versus personal life balance? Especially with remote working, because now all of a sudden we can work anytime, all the time, right? So how do you manage that? And Els, let me take it from you first, because you're giving a bit of a giggle there on that side.
Yeah, well, I've had my second child last year during lockdown, and actually in that way, lockdown came in the perfect timing for me. It's all about time management, really. I, for example, between 4 and 8 in the afternoon to 8 in the evening, I'm a full-time mom. I will not reply to emails necessarily, but then once kids are in bed, if you have to restart, then you do. So for me, it's very much time management.
Siti, can I pose this question to you too? Because I said earlier, hats off to you, because you are a lecturer with a very heavy lecturing load, and you're a researcher, and you did your PhD all together. So how do you balance life then into that professional context as well?
A lot of support.
Oh, great.
Really, that is essentially it. A lot of support. I mean, when I think about it as a lecturer, when you're employed as a lecturer at a university, you have to contribute to the 3 components: teaching, research, and community engagement. Now, community engagement for me comes a little bit easier because I actually enjoy that. But I also realize that I inspire other upcoming scientists who are my students. Some of them are my students, and one of them actually posted a question.
Okay, we'll get to that one just now for you.
So it's essential for me to also remember that the moment when I feel like I am not doing that well, it's a reminder that I can get up again, because there are a trail of students watching us, youngsters watching us, really.
That's a really great vision, again, to have them being a role model for younger kids, and younger students. Michał, who is Michał when he's at home? How do you balance life and science?
It's kind of a difficult question for me, I have to say. It just happened naturally that I I just wake up, start working at a given point after my breakfast, and then work until I'm tired. And then sometimes in the evening I work again. And for me, remote working actually gave me more flexibility, and I do enjoy that. So I'm typically more prone to work in the evening or late at night. So also the fact that I'm not going to the university but stay at home and work during the day, then I can work at night. It allowed me to. It allowed me to. This flexibility is of a big value for me actually right now. I think yeah.
And that's also important as a scientist, because you need to be creative. It sounds strange because we're very dogmatic and we're very empirical, but we need to be creative as well. So to have that flexibility and that freedom to think is really what's so important to us. Yeah.
Yeah. Also the fact that we can actually work from different places. So
Yeah.
sometimes changing the environment gives you a bit of inspiration. You see different problems. You see different challenges, and you think about your research questions from different angles. So as I said, from my perspective, it is productive. Although I have to admit that I have comfortable conditions also to work at home. So that's not equal for everyone. And I imagine that there are people with challenges here.
Yeah. So Rian, you mentioned that you were a dad of 2 little toddlers. How do you manage to be the dad and the leading scientist?
Well, they're 9 and 10, but they behave like toddlers most often. They're a treat, and I love them very much. And thankfully, they have similar interests to what I have. They love the outdoors. They love exploring. They love bacteria and archaeology. But I'm also often flexibility has really actually helped me quite a bit in coping with the load of being a parent and the workload as well. We can work at home, we can work anywhere.
Yeah.
You can work for 30 minutes and then you can see to your kids' lunch or dinner, or you can go and play outside. And I quite like that. I've never been a 9-to-5 type of person. And I think as scientists we often suffer from writer's block. If you want to call it that, you need to really be in the mood and you need to be inspired. There's that single paragraph that you write at 2:30 in the morning.
Exactly that. You have to have your pen and paper ready.
Yes, next
it.
to your bed almost. And that's what makes the difference in many cases.
Absolutely.
So, of course, when the pandemic started, it was difficult. We were all so used to this archaic system of flying across the globe at terrible environmental cost to attend a conference. Now we can do this remotely on a daily basis. I've had more discussions with colleagues in Europe and all over the place in the last year than I've ever had, just because they're a WhatsApp call away or a Zoom call. Or
and it's acceptable now.
It is. It is. It's so
great.
easy and it's so convenient, and we're all used to it. I think we've entered a new this sort of phase of humanity remotely.
Absolutely.
Like the world is more accessible now.
It is.
During lockdown than ever before.
It is, definitely. And I think it took us all a year to realize that we can work at home or remotely, but it's definitely possible. Like Michael said, we live in South Africa, and a lot of students, I understand, do not have the similar fortunate environments in which to work at home. And I often see students at UP appreciating UP as a place to go and relax and focus and work, and that's important. I think UP being able to offer that to so many South Africans is a great thing.
Great. So we're going to take one last quick question. Is Fiona, is that your student? CT?
No, it's Matete.
Matete. So Matete was asking, I'm going to pose it to you because you said it was your student. So she asked that some of the research questions, which of those research questions were deliberately designed to ensure project relevance, and particularly for the future as well. That's quite a deep question.
Yeah, Matete, that's way too deep. Okay, so in my experience, or what I did is, like I said, I developed new models, but the question was basically, why would you develop new models? And it so happens that the models that are already developed in literature at times do not, cannot really fit current complex data set and our current problems. So there's an evolution, ever-changing need to develop new techniques that cater to current problems.
Yeah. I think it's so important. I think all of my postgraduate students suffer from me continuously asking them, so what? And that's the key driver. So where you're going and you're going to get there. So thank you very much, Els, for joining us remotely. We're glad everything went well and Eskom left us alone for a while so that you could join us. Michael, thank you so much for coming. CT as well as Rian, thanks for the talk. And we're going to hand over to Prof. Erasmus just to finish off the session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lynn-Marie, for managing that very, very interesting panel. I mean, even though these are all researchers in the faculty that I'm familiar with, I know their names, I know their work, it's always interesting to learn a little bit more about the people and the person or the team behind the research that we see in the formal report. So thank you very much for that. The one piece of good news that I take from this panel is that the different pathways, or shall I say the diversity of pathways in academia, the diversity of insights, and the diversity of viewpoints that come from people in different disciplines. Even this is just 4 researchers from our large faculty, and already we've got very, very different pathways that have brought them to this particular stage in their careers. The type of problems that we tackle on the African continent are these wicked, intertwined, complicated problems, complex problems that can't be solved by an individual discipline. And it's only through the teamwork and the diversity of insights and people that we can actually arrive at the necessary solutions. So here it becomes diversity is a prerequisite for success. And I'm deeply heartened to see that this diversity does exist in the faculty and we are tackling these existential problems on the continent. So the only thing that remains for me is to thank, words of thank you. First of all, Lynn-Marie, thank you very much for managing the panel so adroitly and interesting. Thank you very much to panelists, CT, Michal, Rian and Els, thanks for making yourselves available. I know there's lots of competing interest on your time, so thanks for taking the trouble. Thank you to Marie Venter and her team at the faculty administration to make this event possible. And lastly, thanks to Spatial Studios for this wonderful facility in which we were able to record this event. So colleagues, thank you very much. Keep an eye on this space for the next Conversations at NAS. All the best, look after yourselves. Goodbye.